What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. Is this the year that Dan Mullen finally takes a team to an SEC championship? Is this the year Florida beats Georgia and wins the SEC East? There are some experts out there who believe that is exactly what will happen, and that's the game. It's all about that Florida-Georgia game, really, for both teams heading into this season. You look at this Florida team, this Florida roster, defensively, they were pretty solid last year. I expect them to be good defensively again this year, similar to what they were last year. I know they lost some playmakers, but you've got some young guys that I think will emerge there, so I think they'll be about the same there. Offensively, they've added some weapons with some transfers, and Kyle Trask proved to be a very, very solid quarterback last season for this Florida Gators team. But it comes down to the offensive line. That is going to determine this team's success, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Can they protect Kyle Trask, who's not a real mobile quarterback? And can they get a run game going? That's something that they really just could not do last year. I think the offensive line improves this year, but the question is, how much does it improve, and is it enough to overtake Georgia in the SEC East? Here's what some of the other predictions look like for Florida. The FBI has this team going 9.7 and 2.7. That would include a potential SEC championship game. So a roughly 40% chance of this team actually making it to the SEC championship. But about 10 and 2 or maybe even 9 and 3 for them in the regular season. Vegas has the over-under at 10, so you either have to go over or under that. It would be hard to imagine this team losing more than a couple of games this year because their schedule is really not that tough. We'll see. Athlon has them at 11 and 1. I put 11 and 2 there. I meant to put 11 and 1, but it actually does go to 11 and 2 because it has them losing to Alabama in the SEC championship. But yes, Athlon Sports does have Florida winning the SEC East, going 11 and 1, and then losing in the SEC championship. So here is the schedule for the Florida Gators. And again, this schedule really is not that tough. The non-conference schedule is very easy. They only play Florida State, who they play every year, of course, because of the rivalry. But they open up with Eastern Washington, and we're going to assume they win that game. Kentucky is a tricky game, though, on September the 12th. Kentucky, of course, finally beat Florida a couple of years ago, got over the hump, and they did it in the swamp. Could they do that again this year? Kentucky's going to have a good team, a good roster, going to be able to run the football, going to have a great offensive line, going to have a good defense. This will be a close game, in my opinion. I don't think Florida blows them out, but I do think Florida wins. I think they win, again, a pretty close game, maybe even a one-possession game, and I think they also beat South Alabama. So I think they'll start the season off 3-0 before a big game on September 26th on the road at Tennessee. A lot of people think that this could be an upset alert game. A lot of people expect Tennessee to be much improved this year, and it is on the road. This will be a tough game. I think it will be a close game. It's Tennessee's chance to prove that they can play with the top teams in the SEC, and I think they're going to give Florida all they want in this matchup. But I think ultimately the offense for Florida is just more explosive than Tennessee's offense, and I think they're able to put up some points. Tennessee maybe struggles in that area in this game in the second half, and Florida finds a way to get it done, and they start the season off 4-0 before heading into the month of October, where they will play South Carolina on October the 3rd. This could be an interesting game, I guess. I don't think South Carolina is going to be really anywhere near the level of Florida or Georgia in the East. They had some struggles last year, inconsistent play, injuries, a lot of things kind of piled up against them last year. I think maybe they improve a little bit this year, but not a whole lot. I think they're a similar team that we saw last year. I think Florida is able to handle this one. You don't want to look ahead to LSU. That might be one thing here. You're saying South Carolina upset Georgia on their home field last year. So that's, it's a sandwich game between Tennessee and LSU. Don't overlook it, but I think Florida will win that game fairly easily. LSU on October the 10th. Remember, the Tigers beat Florida last season, but this time it's in the swamp, and I think it's going to be a hostile environment. Maybe the loudest game of the year, probably, yeah, the loudest game of the year in the swamp. They don't really have any other big games at home. Georgia's on a neutral field. So, yeah, I think the crowd will definitely play a factor in this one, but if you watch the LSU video, I just think the swagger of LSU from winning that championship, the confidence that they have, I think they're going to relish that role of maybe even the underdog going on the road, and I think they find a way to get it done. It's a very, very close game, maybe an all-time classic, but I'm going to go with LSU to get maybe an upset. Depends on where the teams are ranked, obviously, but I think playing at home, Florida will be the favorite in that game. But yeah, I think LSU pulls off the upset. The next week is at Ole Miss. And just like that South Carolina game, it's a sandwich game between LSU and Georgia. They do get a bye week after this, so that'll help. Ole Miss is going to be an interesting team this year. They're going to have an explosive offense with Lane Kiffin at the helm. I don't really expect them to, I expect them to come out and score points. I think they're going to be good on that side of the ball. Defensively, we'll have to wait and see. It's a typical upset alert game, trap game on the road. I just think Florida, if it gets into a shootout, I think that they're going to be the better team on offense, more consistent team, more balanced team, and they find a way to get it done in a close game. It's a scare, but they survive and beat Ole Miss to move to 6-1. Georgia is up next on October 31st. If Jamie Newman is a bust for Georgia, and Georgia is not explosive on offense, and they're similar to what they were last year on that side of the ball, I think Florida wins this game. I really do. I do not think Georgia can win this game with their defense alone. As good as it's going to be, I think they will have to have some offense. That's going to be the question mark, in my opinion. How good is Jamie Newman? How good is this offense with all the changes that they're planning to make? I just personally believe they're going to be able to get it done. I think it's going to work out for Georgia. I think Florida loses a very, very close game. Very similar to the LSU loss. I think it's a one-possession game in the fourth quarter. Georgia survives. I just think that, their defense maybe makes a big play late, and their offense, again, does a little bit more than they did last year. Georgia wins this game. Florida goes to 6-2, and they are then eliminated pretty much from the college football playoff. Vanderbilt is on November the 7th. It's on the road. You don't want to have a hangover after that Georgia game. Don't want to start slow, but I don't see that happening. Vanderbilt's just not going to have the talent to play with the top-tier team in the SEC, even at home. I think Florida blows them out. I think they take out some frustration, and they have a big, big day winning this one by 30-plus points and moving on to 7-2. Missouri on November 14th. Remember when Missouri was giving Florida trouble? That was for a few years there. I don't know what was going on there, but it seems like Florida's finally gotten over that. Missouri is in rebuild mode. I think they got more talent than Vanderbilt, but still they're not going to be a serious contender in the SEC East. The game is at home for Florida. There's really no reason to expect Missouri to be able to have any chance in this game. So I think Florida takes care of business. Maybe they don't win by 30-plus, but they do win by 20-plus. And again, get a big win there over Missouri. New Mexico State right after that. Should be another easy win. So I think 3 easy wins in a row before playing Florida State. Rivalry game to close out the season on November 28th. It will be on the road for Florida. How much of a turnaround are the Seminoles going to have with Mike Norvell taking over as their head coach? I think they're better this year. I really do. They've got the talent. If they could, if they're coached a little bit better, this team has a chance to be a top 25 team, in my opinion. And because of that, I don't think Florida just goes in there and rolls them and beats them by 30 points. I think it's a little bit closer. But I think Florida is still the better team. I still think Florida State's a ways away from being able to beat Florida. When you look at where Florida is right now, I think Florida does win this one. We'll say by about 14. But watch out, it could be a little bit closer than you might think on the road, rivalry game. And again, I think Florida State's going to be better this year. But Florida wins it, and they finish 10-2. I mean, you look at this schedule. And there are 5 games that really concern me a little bit, and that's LSU and Georgia, Ole Miss and Tennessee on the road, and then maybe even Kentucky. But out of those 5 games, I feel pretty confident that Florida can win 3 of the 5, maybe even 4 of the 5. Florida and Penn State were 2 teams that I really looked at hard as teams that could go 11-1 and not win their conference and maybe make the college football playoff. I still think that's a possibility for Florida. The strength of schedule could hurt them a little bit there. So I think their best playoff path is just to beat Georgia and win the SEC. You got to beat Georgia, maybe lose to LSU or lose somewhere else on the schedule, but just beat Georgia, win the SEC championship, and obviously with 1 loss, this team would make the college football playoff. I think Florida is going to be very close to an elite team this year. I think they are a playoff contender, but at the end of the day, I do have them with a couple of losses because everybody can't make the college football playoff, so it's just not going to be Florida, in my opinion. Although at one point this offseason, I actually was picking Florida to make the college football playoff. I've changed my mind a little bit. I think that offensive line maybe holds them back a little bit, and there's some other good teams, really good teams out there. So again, I think Florida comes up just short. What do all of you think about the Gators? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports YouTube channel.